The first thing the alien hunter noticed was the silence. The forest was never silent, not at dawn, not at dusk, not even in the dead of night when the stars veiled themselves behind clouds. There was always the hum of insects, the cry of distant predators, the shifting wind through the endless canopy. But this morning, the silence hung heavy, as though the entire wilderness held its breath. That was when they saw it. Something broken, something alive, something not of this world. It lay tangled among shattered branches, smoke rising faintly from the wreckage of metal unlike anything the hunter had seen. A creature sprawled there, battered, bleeding, and yet unmistakably alive. Two eyes, sharp and strange, locked onto theirs. It didn't bare fangs, it didn't growl. It simply waited. And in that instant, curiosity pushed harder than fear. What was this fragile-looking thing? Why had it fallen from the sky? And, most dangerous of all, was it truly as weak as it appeared, or was weakness only a mask? Before we dive deeper, traveler of stories, if you're drawn to mysteries, if you crave the hidden truths of humanity among the stars, make sure you've joined us. Subscribe, leave a like, and stay with me until the end. Because this tale isn't about conquest. It's about what happens when the galaxy learns. The humans are not as they seem. The hunter stepped closer, clutching their spear, each footfall soft against the moss. The creature stirred. Its hand, five-fingered, unfamiliar, lifted weakly. Not in defense, not in threat, in something else entirely. A gesture the hunter could not name but somehow understood. A plea for peace. The forest whispered again. The silence broke. Far off, the cry of carrion birds echoed, circling in hungry anticipation. If the hunter walked away, this strange being would be dead before nightfall. If they stayed, they risked their tribe's wrath. Still, the alien did not walk away. They knelt beside the human soldier and for the first time in their life placed trust in the unknown. And so, the bond began. The hunter's hand trembled as it hovered over the strange being's chest. Its breathing was ragged, shallow, like wind scraping through broken reeds. The smell of blood was heavy, but the wounds were strange, burns edged with torn flesh, metal fragments buried deep. No predator of this forest had done this. The alien's tribe had warned them since childhood. Never touch what falls from the sky. Skyfall was cursed, they said. Those who meddled with it brought ruin on their kin. And yet, here they were, spear lowered, eyes locked with the soldiers. The human's gaze did not waver. There was no malice, no threat, only something raw. Pain, yes, but also endurance. The hunter knew that look. It was the look of prey that refused to die. Slowly, the hunter slung their spear over their back and reached out, their claws carefully pressed against the soldier's chest, feeling the faint thump-thump of the strange heart. Alive. Fading, but alive. The forest seemed to lean in closer, listening. Branches creaked, leaves whispered. Even the birds above had fallen silent again, as though waiting for the choice. And the choice was made. The hunter would not abandon this creature. Curse or not, they could not leave it to be devoured. With effort, they hefted the human over their shoulders. It was heavier than it looked, its body dense with hidden strength, but the hunter's legs carried them through the underbrush. Each step was a defiance of tradition, a step deeper into uncertainty. Behind them, carrion birds swooped low over the wreckage, screeching in frustration. Ahead, the forest thickened, swallowing both hunter and human in shadow. The bond had begun not with words, not with trust freely given, but with a risk. One that neither fully understood. What the hunter could not know was this. Saving that fragile-looking soldier would not just change their life. It would change their entire world. The hunter's den was carved deep into a cliffside hollow, hidden by vines and shadow. It was a place meant for solitude, a refuge where no prying eyes from the tribe could follow. That night, however, it became something more, a place of secrecy, of defiance. The human lay upon woven mats of bark and moss, his strange armor stacked carefully to the side. Blood had dried in ugly streaks across his pale skin, his breath shallow but stubbornly steady. Every rise and fall of his chest felt like a battle he refused to lose. The hunter crouched nearby, claws stained red from where they had tried, awkwardly, desperately, to clean his wounds. Their people were healers in their own way, versed in herbs and bone setting, but this was unlike anything they had treated before. Burns that glowed faintly at the edges, metal shards buried like venomous thorns, injuries carved by war that had fallen from the heavens. The human groaned softly, eyes fluttering open for the briefest moment. Dark pupils fixed on the hunter. No words passed between them, only a strained breath and a faint, defiant spark, an unspoken promise. I endure. Then the eyes closed again. The hunter's ears twitched at a sound outside. A low whistle carried on the wind, the call of another tribesman scouting nearby. Panic surged in their chest. If anyone discovered this, the punishment would be swift, and not just for the hunter. The entire family line could be cast into exile for defying the law of the skyfall. Moving quickly, the hunter covered the human's body with animal hides, disguising the shape. The den smelled of iron and smoke now, foreign and wrong. If another entered, the secret would be uncovered instantly. The whistle faded into the distance. Silence returned. The hunter exhaled slowly, heart pounding. They turned their gaze back to the wounded soldier. What was he? A curse? A gift? One thing was certain. The moment they carried him from the forest, they had stepped onto a path that could never be undone. And somewhere, deep within the dark, the soldier stirred again, muttering words in a tongue the hunter could not understand. Words that, though foreign, carried weight. It sounded almost like home. The fire crackled low in the hunter's den, throwing fractured shadows across the stone walls. The human stirred again, more restless this time. His breathing came sharper, more forceful, as though dragging himself up from some abyss. The hunter leaned close, ears angled, waiting. The soldier's eyes opened, glassy at first, then sharper, focusing on the unfamiliar ceiling of rock above him. His lips moved, cracked and dry, forming sounds the hunter could not shape, let alone comprehend. The words were guttural, heavy, but one kept repeating, almost like a plea. Water. The hunter did not know the word, but the tone carried need. The body's thirst was universal, spoken even without speech. Rising quickly, they fetched a carved bowl from a crevice where fresh rainwater collected. Carefully, they lifted the human's head. His body was warm with fever, heavier than expected, but still alive, stubbornly alive. The bowl touched his lips. At first, he coughed, choking slightly, but then drank greedily, as though he had not tasted water in days. Drops ran down his chin, and he let out a weak sigh that almost sounded like gratitude. The hunter studied him closely. His eyes were unlike theirs, so much darker, deeper, holding something unreadable. Not prey, not predator, but something more dangerous, something that chose. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then the soldier tried again, raising a trembling hand. He pointed to his chest. Human! The hunter froze. The sound was harsh, clipped, but it was deliberate. A name, a claim, or perhaps a warning. The hunter hesitated, then touched their own chest. Slowly they gave their name, the word sharp and rolling like stone scraping stone. The soldier's lips moved as though trying to repeat it, but the sounds tangled on his tongue. He grimaced, then gave a weak, almost amused huff of air. Not laughter exactly, but close. The hunter felt a strange ripple of something they had no word for. This was no longer just survival. It was something deeper, something dangerous. A bridge being built between two beings who should have remained strangers. Outside, the night wind carried the distant call of their kin. The tribe still searched for signs of the fallen star. They believed the land itself would curse them if the survivor lived. But inside this hidden den, a different truth was quietly being written. The human knew the word water. The hunter now knew the word human. And both knew, without speaking, that secrecy was no longer enough, because knowledge, once shared, had a way of spreading, like fire from a spark. The storm passed in the night, leaving the air cool and sharp with the scent of wet earth. Dawn broke pale over the valley, painting the forest in drifting mists. The hunter rose early, every sense alert. The tribe's search had grown more restless, and it was only a matter of time before they came too close. The human slept fitfully in the den, his strange body caught between recovery and collapse. The fever still clung to him, but his breaths were deeper now, steadier. The hunter crouched beside him, studying the pale skin, the strange angles of his face, the broadness of his shoulders. There was strength there, even half broken, strength that unsettled them. They should have left him, should have delivered him to the elders and let ritual judgment decide his fate. But something, call it instinct, or perhaps a shadow of curiosity, kept the hunter's hand from that path. Instead, they moved carefully, gathering herbs from their pouch, ground roots for fever, bark soaked in water to draw poison from the blood. They crushed the mixture and pressed it gently against the human's lips. He resisted at first, coughing weakly, but the hunter murmured a sound, low, steady, like one would soothe a youngling. Slowly, stubbornly, he swallowed. When his eyes opened again, he stared at the hunter, long and searching, as though trying to read intent through the gulf of language. His lips moved again. That same harsh word, human. The hunter answered with their own name. Slower this time, as if teaching a child. He tried again, mangling the syllables, and this time the sound almost resembled truth. The hunter felt their chest tighten in something dangerously close to pride. But outside, danger pressed closer. Through the mist, the hunter caught movement, shapes in the distance, shadows of their kin moving along the ridge. They were searching more aggressively now, and if they found the den, the human would not live to see another sunrise. The hunter crouched low, heart pounding. They could betray him now, call to the others, let duty outweigh curiosity. But when they looked back at the human, weak, battered, yet trying to form words beyond his strength, they felt something shift inside them. This was no longer prey, no longer an intruder. This was a choice. The hunter reached for their weapon and stepped outside, silent as stone. They would mislead the tribe, scatter tracks, buy time. Because though they did not yet understand why, they had decided this strange being was worth protecting. And once a hunter chose their quarry, they did not turn away. The valley held its breath that morning. Mist still clung to the ridges, softening every shadow, but the hunter's eyes caught movement easily. Kin moving along the slope, their voices carrying low and sharp. The search had grown tighter. The tribe no longer wandered loosely. They moved like a pack closing on prey. The hunter stepped into the open with measured calm, weapons slung across their back. Every movement had to be calculated. If suspicion lingered too long, the den, and the strange creature hidden inside, would be uncovered. One of the searchers called out, their tone edged with irritation. "Tracks! Fresh ones!" He pointed toward the valley floor where the human had first stumbled through days ago. Too close. Too recent. The hunter's pulse quickened, but their face betrayed nothing. They strode to the spot, crouched low, and studied the ground. Yes, the tracks were there, but rain and time had softened them. The hunter straightened, deliberately scoffing. "Old," they said with quiet certainty. Storm washed them. Not worth following. Another hunter narrowed their eyes, clearly unconvinced. You speak quickly for one who claims to know. Are you hiding something? The question stung, not because of its truth, but because the tribe trusted no deception. Hunters lived by honor, by truth. To lie, even for survival, carried risk beyond death. It carried shame. Yet the hunter did not flinch. They met their kin's gaze and replied with steady finality, "If I found prey, would I not take its hide as proof? Would I not bring meat for the fire? Do you doubt my skill?" The silence that followed was heavy. Then, with a mutter, the others spread out again, searching elsewhere. Suspicion lingered, but they moved on. When the ridge was clear, the hunter slipped back toward the den, shoulders tense, heart pounding. They had walked a knife's edge and survived. For now. Inside, the human stirred, weak but restless. His eyes found the hunter instantly, as though he knew the danger pressing closer. He lifted a trembling hand, fingers brushing the dirt, tracing shapes. Letters. A desperate attempt to communicate. The hunter knelt, watching as the human scrawled something crooked into the earth. The symbols were foreign, meaningless, but the intent was clear. Understanding. The hunter's throat tightened. Against reason, against law, this bond was deepening. And though they had shielded the human once, the truth was inescapable. Their tribe would not stop searching. Sooner or later, suspicion would turn into discovery. And when that moment came, one of them would have to choose between blood and trust. The human healed faster than the hunter expected. His body, though battered, carried resilience that defied logic. Each day he pushed himself, forcing his limbs to obey, refusing to remain still. The hunter marveled at the determination, though it carried risk, noise, movement, signs that could betray them both. One evening, as crimson light bled across the sky, the human rose shakily to his feet. His breath was ragged, but his stance was steady. He gestured for the hunter's spear, pointing toward the open valley beyond the den. The hunter froze. A spear was no simple tool. It was heritage, skill, life itself. To hand it to another, especially to one outside the tribe, was unthinkable. But the human's eyes held no mockery, no arrogance. They held resolve. He was not asking to fight. He was asking to prove. The hunter hesitated only a moment longer before offering the weapon. The human gripped it clumsily, adjusting to its weight. His stance was wrong, his balance uneven. But when a shape darted from the underbrush, a lean creature with snapping jaws, instinct took over. The spear flew. It did not strike clean, but it struck true enough. The creature yelped and fell, wounded. The human staggered, surprised by his own success, then turned toward the hunter, chest heaving, eyes bright with something raw. Pride, defiance, and the silent declaration, "I am not weak." The hunter's pulse quickened. This was no helpless creature, no fragile burden. This was a warrior, stripped of his arms and armor, yet still carrying the spirit of battle. But even as admiration swelled, fear bled into it. If the tribe saw this, if they understood the truth, their judgment would be swift. The hunter stepped forward, retrieving the spear, finishing the beast with a practiced strike. They kept their voice calm, steady. "You learn quickly, too quickly." The human sank back against the den wall, exhaustion pulling at him, but his gaze never faltered. He had shown what he was capable of, and in doing so, he had shifted the balance. No longer was he simply something to protect. Now he was something to fear. And the hunter knew that hiding him had just become far more dangerous. The valley carried sound in strange ways. A snapped branch could echo for miles. A fire's crackle could betray a camp. The hunter knew this truth well, yet tonight the echoes brought something worse. Whispers. From the ridge above, faint voices carried down the slope, too far to make out, but close enough to confirm one thing. Others were hunting. The human, sensing the hunter's sudden stillness, followed their gaze. His hand clenched, instinctively reaching for a weapon he no longer carried. The hunter pressed a palm against his chest, a silent command. Stay hidden. But the human had proven himself no passive shadow. Each day, his body grew stronger. Each day, his spirit refused silence. And now, crouched beside the hunter, his eyes narrowed with the recognition that this was no chance encounter. Someone had followed. The hunter's thoughts tangled. The tribe had been restless for days, suspicious of their absence, questioning their hunts that yielded little meat, little proof. If the whispers belonged to scouts, then discovery was near. If the scouts found the human, mercy would not exist. The hunter moved quickly, guiding the human deeper into the den, shrouding him with furs and branches. But before they could retreat, a sharp cry pierced the air, a hunting signal. Not prey, not a beast, a warning. The human's eyes sharpened. He understood, even without words. They had been found. Moments later, shadows emerged at the edge of the firelight. 3 figures, armed and wary, their eyes scanning the clearing. Warriors of the tribe. The hunter's pulse thundered. Their spear felt heavier than ever. They could not fight their own. They could not expose the truth. Yet they could not abandon the human, not after what he had shown, not after the fragile bond forged between them. One of the warriors stepped closer, nostrils flaring as they caught the scent of blood. Their gaze hardened. "You've been hiding something." The hunter's voice caught in their throat. Excuses burned away, lies crumbled. The human shifted behind them, every muscle ready, coiled like the beast the tribe believed him to be. The moment balanced on a blade's edge. And for the first time, the hunter realized something terrifying. It wasn't just their tribe that needed protecting from the human. It was the human who might unleash something far greater than any of them were prepared to face. The air was thick with smoke from the small fire, but it wasn't the flames that choked the hunter's breath. It was the silence. The taut, crushing silence between the 3 warriors of their tribe and the human hidden just beyond the flicker of light. The lead scout narrowed his eyes. His spear gleamed with fresh oil, sharpened for hunting, but his stance screamed suspicion. He stepped closer. "You bring no meat. You wander too far. You carry the scent of something unnatural." The hunter forced a steady breath. "I hunt where the prey leads, nothing more." But lies had weight, and this one sagged heavily. The second warrior sniffed at the air, eyes darting toward the den where the human crouched, motionless beneath branches and hides. Their expression hardened. Something is here. The hunter's blood turned to ice. They shifted their stance, spear angled, not against the strangers before them, but against the terrible truth waiting to be uncovered. Behind them, the human's hand brushed the ground. Not a weapon, not yet. Just earth clutched between calloused fingers. But his eyes burned with something dangerous, something that spoke louder than words. "If they attack, I will not fall quietly." The lead scout's gaze snapped to the hunter. His voice was low, sharp, the tone of one demanding loyalty. "Move aside." The hunter didn't move. Their pulse hammered. Every choice fractured into consequences. Defend the human and betray the tribe. Reveal the truth and condemn him to death. Fight their own kin and be cast out forever. The second warrior stepped forward. The hunter acted. A sudden sweep of their spear shaft struck the warrior's chest, sending them staggering back. Not a kill, just a warning. Gasps erupted. The fire crackled, throwing sparks into the night, as all eyes turned to the hunter standing between kin and secret. "Enough!" the hunter growled, voice trembling with defiance. "Leave this place, now!" But the third scout had already seen too much. Their eyes widened as, for the briefest instant, the human shifted in the shadows, broad shoulders, pale skin reflecting the firelight. The scout whispered one word, a curse, a warning, a spark. "Demon!" The word carried like thunder. And just like that, The fragile veil protecting the human's existence began to tear. The word hung in the air like poison. Demon. The hunter's spears lowered into killing stances. The air snapped with tension as though the night itself held its breath. From the shadows, the human rose. Not fully, just enough that the firelight spilled across his form. Not a beast, not a ghost. A man of flesh and blood, scarred and silent, his eyes fixed on the warriors who threatened him. The three scouts recoiled at first, instinctive fear flashing across their faces. But fear is a double-edged thing. It can breed flight, or it can spark violence. The lead scout chose violence. With a guttural cry, he thrust his spear forward. The hunter moved before the human could. Their spear clashed against the scouts, the sound sharp as splitting bone. Sparks shot as wood cracked. "You've gone mad!" the second scout shouted, circling, ready to strike. "No!" the hunter barked, heart hammering. "You don't understand!" But words were fragile things in the heat of blood. The second scout lunged, spear slicing toward the hidden figure behind them. The human reacted. His hand shot forward, catching the spear mid-thrust. Wood splintered against his grip, the strength behind it inhuman by their standards. With a savage twist, he ripped the weapon free and flung it into the dirt. The warriors froze. Their gazes darted from the ruined weapon to the towering figure who stood unarmed, yet more dangerous than any predator they had faced. The lead scout's voice wavered. "What is this?" The human stepped forward, slow, deliberate, like a shadow given flesh. His voice was low, guttural, carrying a weight none of them could mistake. "Not enemy, not demon, man." The words were broken, strained, but they struck like a hammer. The hunter's chest heaved. They could see it now, the truth unraveling, their tribe's fear boiling over. There would be no hiding this anymore. The human had revealed himself. The third scout backed away, eyes wild. "We must tell the elders." The human tensed, ready to silence him forever. But the hunter's hand shot up, stopping him. Their choice was made, and it was irreversible. "No," the hunter said, voice hard. "If word spreads now, he dies. We all die. This stays here, or blood will drown the village." The lead scout's jaw tightened. "You would risk everything for this thing?" The hunter didn't flinch. Not for a thing, for a friend. The fire snapped, sparks drifting into the night sky. Around them, the silence grew heavy, as if the world itself waited for a verdict. And in that silence, the human's chest rose and fell, his eyes never leaving the warriors. No fear, no plea, only readiness. The hunters of the tribe had seen many things, but never this. An outsider who stood unbroken, who looked at death and did not tremble. And slowly, terribly, that frightened them more than any demon ever could. The night after the fire confrontation carried a weight that would not lift. The scouts had returned to the village silent, their eyes darting, their voices clipped. They said nothing of what they'd seen, but silence itself was a kind of noise, louder than shouts, sharper than blades. By dawn, whispers had already begun. Children spoke of shadows moving near the tree line. Elders muttered of omens, of curses returned from the old wars. Hunters sharpened their spears more often, though no one admitted why. The hunter felt it in every glance, every word half swallowed. The secret was bleeding into the village like smoke through cracks, impossible to contain. They went to the clearing again, as they always did, bringing food hidden beneath furs. The human was waiting, crouched low, watching the trees as though sensing the tension himself. His eyes met theirs, dark, piercing, knowing. "They know," the hunter whispered. The human's jaw tightened, the line of his shoulders stiff. He said nothing, only looked away, scanning the tree line as though preparing for the inevitable. The hunter crouched beside him. "If they fear you, they will strike. Not tomorrow, not openly, but they will come. Spears in the dark. The human turned back, his eyes narrowing. Then, I leave. The words struck like cold iron. No, the hunter hissed, gripping his arm. If you vanish, the whispers will grow teeth. They will hunt you, and every death that follows will fall on me. The human's gaze softened just slightly. He did not pull away. They both knew the truth. The tribe was teetering. One push, one careless spark, and the fragile balance would collapse. That night, the tension reached its peak. In the village square, a council gathered. The elders sat in a half-circle, their faces painted with ash, their voices low. The three scouts stood before them, hands clenched, eyes burning with what they had seen. The hunter stood among them, heart pounding, sweat cold against their back. Every instinct screamed to protect the secret, to shield the human. An elder spoke, voice old and cracked but sharp as flint. We have heard much. Whispers of a figure in the woods, too tall, too strong, not beast, not man, a demon perhaps, a curse from the sky. The gathered villagers stirred, fear flashing across their faces. The elder's gaze swept across the hunters. You three, he said to the scouts, you saw it. Speak. The lead scout's lips parted, hesitation flickering in his eyes. He remembered the human's strength, the spear broken like a twig, the voice that had spoken not in growls, but in words. He remembered the look in the human's eyes, not beast, not demon, but something more. He opened his mouth. The hunter's heart stopped. The secret was about to shatter. But then the scout closed his mouth again, his jaw clenching. He shook his head. Nothing, he said. Only shadows. The forest plays tricks. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The other two scouts stiffened, confused, but they held their tongues. The elder narrowed his eyes. You would have us believe this? The scout bowed his head. Yes, there is no demon, only fear. The hunter's breath came sharp and fast. Relief flooded them, but it was poisoned by doubt, because even as the scout spoke, his hand trembled, and his eyes flicked just once toward the trees beyond the firelight, toward where the human waited. The village was quieter than usual, and that silence was dangerous. After the council, no one spoke of demons aloud, yet the tension rippled through every conversation, every meal, every glance at the forest's edge. The scouts had spared the secret, for now, but lies, like smoke, had a way of clinging to everything. The hunter returned to the clearing with heavy steps. The human waited as always, crouched low, watching the tree line like a sentinel who knew enemies moved unseen. They do not yet speak your name, the hunter said quietly, kneeling beside him. But suspicion grows. A silence like this, it is worse than open fear. The human studied them for a long moment, then glanced back toward the village fires flickering faintly in the distance. His face was unreadable. Finally he said, Then I go to them. The hunter's heart lurched. No, they hissed. They are not ready. If you walk into that firelight, they will see only a demon wearing man's shape. The human's gaze was steady, calm in a way that unsettled. Better they see me than imagine me. A shadow grows larger when unseen. The hunter clenched their jaw, torn between reason and instinct. He was right. Silence would only worsen the fear. But to bring him into the heart of the tribe was to invite spears, maybe blood. And yet, what was the alternative? That night, under a sliver of moon, the hunter made their choice. They led him along the hidden paths, moving silent as foxes. The village fires glowed ahead, faint at first, then bright, a circle of warmth and danger. The human's presence behind them was a weight, too tall, too broad, too foreign. Every snapped twig sounded like a war drum in their ears. When they reached the edge of the firelight, the hunter raised a hand. Stay. I will speak first. But the human stepped forward anyway, The flames revealed him piece by piece, broad shoulders, scarred arms, eyes glinting like dark steel. A murmur rippled through the village as heads turned. Spears rose almost instantly, their tips catching the firelight. Children shrieked and fled into huts. Elders barked orders, hunters closed in. The hunter's chest tightened. They had imagined this moment countless times, and now it was here. The tribe, frozen between fear and fury, staring at the man from the stars. One wrong move, and blood would spill. The human did not move to fight. He did not bare teeth or raise fists. Instead, he did something unexpected. He knelt, slowly, deliberately, lowering his head toward the flames, palms open on the ground. Not as a beast cornered, not as a demon, but as something else entirely, something the tribe did not yet have a word for. A hush fell. Even the crackle of fire seemed to dim. The hunter stepped forward, heart hammering. "This one is no demon," they said, voice trembling but strong. "No beast, no curse. He is man, a man from the sky." The words hung heavy in the air, alien and unsteady. The elders exchanged glances. Spears wavered, caught between command and doubt. The humans stayed kneeling, unmoving, waiting. For the first time, the tribe looked not at a shadow in the woods, not at whispers and rumors, but at the stranger himself, silent, scarred, and kneeling before their fire. And in that silence, a dangerous question grew like kindling catching flame. If he was no demon, then what was he? The council fire blazed higher than usual that night, as though the flames themselves knew a verdict was being demanded. The stranger knelt still, motionless, his head bowed to the embers. He had not spoken, not even when the youngest hunters shouted for his blood. He only breathed, steady as stone, a silence heavier than words. The elders encircled him. Their voices rose in sharp bursts, ancient words of judgment mixing with fear. "A demon in flesh!" one cried. "A curse sent from the storms!" barked another. "Or a test," whispered the oldest, her voice so thin it nearly broke. "The fire burns brightest when truth is near." The hunter stood apart, chest tight, watching as the circle drew closer. They knew the rhythm of these councils, the way voices could swell into one conclusion like a river carving stone. And the river was flowing toward blood. "He hides in the forest. He bends beasts to his will. No wounds fell him. He eats our food, but not as we do." Each accusation struck like a spear. The hunter stepped forward, but an elder raised a hand. "You brought him here. You are bound to his fate." The hunter swallowed, eyes flicking to the man. Still he knelt, unflinching, like he had placed his life in the hunter's hands entirely. That trust was a weight heavier than iron. So they spoke. "He is not demon. I have seen demons. They rot the flesh, they twist the soul. This one hunts as we do, bleeds as we do. He learns, he listens, he spares when he could kill." The fire snapped, sparks scattering into the night. The crowd murmured uneasily. "Prove it," an elder demanded. "If he is not demon, let him face the fire." The words struck like thunder. The trial of fire. No child, no hunter, no stranger had ever stood through it unjudged. To endure was to be accepted. To falter was to be cursed. The hunter's breath caught. This was no test of strength. It was a test of spirit. And this man, he did not know their rites, their songs, their prayers. The trial would swallow him whole. But the human lifted his head at last, eyes catching the firelight. He didn't understand the words, but he understood enough. He rose slowly to his feet, towering over the gathered hunters, and pointed to the flames. A single nod. He accepted. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The elders stiffened, then gestured sharply. Wood was piled high, the flames fed until they roared, heat washing over the circle in waves. The hunter's heart pounded. This was madness. But in the human's eyes there was no fear, only resolve, steady and unshakable. When the elders beckoned, he stepped forward into the fire's glow. Shadows danced across his scarred face, sweat already glistening on his brow. The hunter's throat went dry. If he faltered, he would burn. If he endured, the tribe would see something they could never unsee. The trial of fire had begun. The fire howled like a living beast, swallowing wood, spitting sparks into the black sky. The crowd pressed in close, faces flickering in orange and shadow. They waited, not for proof of strength, but for failure. The human stepped forward. Heat slammed into him like a wall. His skin prickled, sweat streaming instantly. The flames licked dangerously close, the smoke clawing down his throat. But he did not retreat. He did not flinch. He walked into the circle of fire. Gasps tore through the onlookers. No outsider had ever dared, no soul had ever entered so willingly. He moved slowly, deliberate, each step a hammer strike against their doubts. The hunter's hands curled into fists. Their hearts screamed to drag him back, to shield him, to scream that this was not his burden. Yet the human walked as if he had carried heavier burdens his whole life. The flames wrapped around him like a crown. His shadow twisted tall against the trees. He stood at the very heart of the blaze, his chest heaving, his body trembling. But he did not fall. Minutes bled like hours. The heat was unbearable even from the edges. Children cried, elders whispered frantic prayers, and still the human endured. Then something changed. He raised his head, eyes glowing with reflected firelight, and stretched his arms wide, as if embracing the inferno itself. His mouth opened, and though no one understood his words, the sound rolled through the smoke like thunder. A shout, a cry, a vow. The fire surged higher, sparks exploding upward into the night sky like stars escaping gravity. For one impossible moment, the flames bent around him, curling as though the fire itself recognized his will. The tribe fell silent. When he staggered forward, out of the blaze, his skin was blackened with soot, his clothes burned to tatters, but he still stood, alive, breathing, unbroken. The oldest elder's voice trembled when she finally spoke. "No demon could do this. No curse could endure. He is flesh. He is spirit. He is chosen." The words fell heavy as stone into the silence. The crowd bowed their heads, not in fear now, but in reverence. The hunter stepped forward, meeting the human's eyes. In them they saw the truth. This was no accident, no mere survival. The fire had marked him, and in doing so, had changed them all. The tribe would never see him as they had before. The trial of fire was over. The stranger was no longer stranger. He was something far greater. The fire had died, but its memory clung to every soul present. Smoke drifted through the trees like restless spirits. Children whispered, elders wept, warriors stared in silence as the human, soot-streaked and trembling, walked among them without fear. The hunter stayed close, their eyes never leaving him. He should have collapsed. He should have begged for water, for healing, for mercy. But instead, he simply nodded at those who met his gaze as though the ordeal was not victory, but obligation. That unsettled them most of all. The tribe gathered in hushed circles that night, words tumbling like dry leaves caught in the wind. Some called him fireproof. Others swore they had seen the flames bend away from his body as if even fire itself bowed before him. A few muttered the word prophecy. The hunter sat with the elders, their voice tight with worry. "He does not even know our gods," they argued. "He speaks strange words. He comes from beyond our skies. How can he be chosen?" The eldest raised her withered hand. "You saw the flames. They consumed but did not claim him. That is more than faith. That is sign." "But what if it is curse?" another countered. "What if his presence draws ruin, not blessing?" The hunter's eyes flicked toward the shadows, where the humans sat apart, mending his scorched gear with steady hands. He had not asked for glory. He had not demanded recognition. He simply endured. "Then why?" the hunter whispered. "Does he look more weary than proud?" Silence fell, because in that question lay a truth none wanted to face. This was not a man seeking worship. This was a man carrying weight. That night, when the human finally slept, the hunter crept close. They studied the lines of his face, the burns on his arms, the quiet rise and fall of his chest. He had walked through fire and emerged whole, but he looked lonelier than ever. Something stirred deep inside the hunter. Not fear, not suspicion. Something older, something dangerous. The urge to protect him, because if he truly bore a prophecy, then so too did he bear the burden of it. And if their people chose to lift him onto a pedestal, they knew what would follow. A man on a pedestal is easy to worship, and even easier to crucify. The hunter clenched their jaw, silently vowing that would not happen, not while they lived. The dawn broke red, painting the sky with the same colors that had licked the human's body in flame. The tribe gathered in the clearing, their voices swelling in songs older than memory, as if the earth itself demanded witness to what had transpired. The elders stood at the center, the hunter beside them, and the human just beyond, his hands scarred but steady. He had not asked to be placed there. He had not demanded their reverence, and yet the eyes of every villager clung to him, torn between awe and fear. The eldest spoke. "This one has endured the fire. This one has walked unbroken where no hunter dared. This one is not as he seems." The murmur rolled through the tribe like thunder. But the hunter's gaze was on the human, not the crowd. They could see the truth in the set of his jaw, the way he shifted uneasily, the weight pressing down on his shoulders. He did not revel in their worship. He feared it. Stepping forward, the hunter raised their spear and slammed its haft into the earth. The sound cracked through the air. Silence followed. "He is no god," the hunter declared. "He is no spirit returned. He is man, flesh and blood. He bleeds as we bleed. He suffers as we suffer. And yet, he endures. That is his gift. That is his strength. That is why he walks with us." The human lifted his eyes then, meeting the hunter's gaze. For the first time since the flames, something like relief flickered across his face. The tribe shifted, uncertain, caught between prophecy and pragmatism. But the hunter's words were a lifeline, a reminder that greatness was not found in divine distance, but in shared struggle. The eldest lowered her head. "Then he will not stand above us. He will stand with us." And so it was decided. The human was not worshipped. He was not cursed. He was something rarer, accepted. The hunter placed a hand on his shoulder, firm, grounding. Their bond was sealed, not by fire nor prophecy, but by choice. That bond would ripple outward in years to come, reshaping both their peoples. For in the end, the revelation was not that humans were gods disguised in flesh. The revelation was that they were men who chose to endure, and in that endurance, they became something even gods might envy. The hunter knew it then, and the human knew it too. They were no longer stranger and native, no longer alien and other. They were brothers. They were kin. They were the living proof that humanity was never what it seemed, because it was always more. And as the fire's ashes cooled, so too did the story of a man who walked through flames become legend, not because he was untouchable, but because he was human.